This is Jonathan Mickles with the Strategic Multifamily Investing Podcast, and I have with me Mr. Zach Zimmer. How's it going, Zach?
Great, great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much. And so, we are slated here as pretty much being towards people who are just starting, wanting to get into multifamily real estate, wanting to get involved in investing, and you seem to be the the right person for this one here. You've got a lot of stuff going on. Your background, your profile mentioned that you have an MBA and you were in the corporate world and all these other kinds of things. Talk to me about the corporate world. Where were you before you jumped into real estate?
Yeah. So I was raised the traditional path, like 99% of kids. Well, there are some that aren't even taught this traditional path, but like, the main path of, hey, go get an education and go get a job, right? That was what I was shown. And I actually read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 1998. So I was either seven, it was 97 or 98, but that's like within a couple of years of that book coming out. I was actually given it by a guy trying to recruit me into multi-level marketing, which, Robert Kiyosaki is a fan. And yeah, multi-level marketing can feel slimy, but it does teach you to go sell. It teaches you some competencies and the idea that your income is only limited by your ability to provide value, sell others, and coach and build a team. And I remember I was given that book and I read some of those lessons and I was like, oh, there's some cool lessons in here, and I remember telling my mom, and so I lived with my mom and my stepdad, and I saw my dad and my stepmom on weekends. And I remember talking to my mom and my stepdad about it. And my stepdad, union laborer, right? My mom, worked in retail and different things. And I remember just, not really feeding that entrepreneurial, that concept at all. And so that book, amazingly, it didn't get thrown away. I still have it. It got thrown to the side and moved around for years and years and years, multiple houses, as I, went to a good college and got a good degree, and then focused on my career, and I relocated and I traveled. And I remember, given that spiel in interviews at basically the how high do you want me to jump? How far do you want me to run? I'll do anything. My company and my career is my focus point. And I did that until right about 2011. I have an MBA. I'm moving up in the company. I'm a manager, engineering manager, continuous improvement manager. And I'm starting to hear about people at this company owning rentals. And it was a company that had a nice bonus structure. So, as a manager, you would be seeing a 15, 20, 25% bonus as you moved up in management levels. And so these guys, just, I'm not sure who started it, but a lot of them would just start, hey, we get this bonus, and now we go turn this single egg into a chicken, right? We get this egg and we get a chicken, and now I'm going to make, okay, $300 a month, $400 a month. And so I remember hearing that and starting to look into it. And a friend of mine in a different department was working with some guys that were really starting to do this, and not just with their bonus, but they were one of them. So this is back when you would get the checks in the mail from your credit card company saying, hey, here's, you can just write this check for $10,000, $20,000, and okay, it's going to be on here as a balance sheet. You get 6 months, no interest or something. So they were going and buying houses on credit cards. And in Ohio, back at that time frame, yeah, you could buy some $20,000, $25,000 houses, maybe even less. And they could go throw $2,000 into them, and now they're renting them at $850, and they can go to a lender and cash back out on an appraisal of $45,000, $50,000, and they're going to pay off that credit card, and they're going to go pocket 7 grand. And so I was hearing about that. And I hadn't gotten my bonus yet. And my wife and I, we were living like your traditional, dinks, right? Double income, no kids. And as we got raises, what would change? The cars would change, the house would change, the patio, the finished basement, the vacations. So I didn't have any money, set aside to do this. And I remember looking into properties and I found a C area, maybe a C minus in Canton, Ohio duplex. And I remember looking through it and I put all the numbers in Excel and I went to my dad. My dad was a business owner. I said, Dad, here, I sent him the email, like, Dad, look at this. Like, hey, I want to take a loan and I'll pay you back over 5 years and this and this and this. And I remember I got the thumbs down. I got rejected from the dad bank. And I was like, oh, he just doesn't get it. And, so I was put back and upset. But I wasn't deterred. So I kept thinking, kept looking, kept watching. And, for some reason, I can't tell you exactly why, but I pivoted back to single family to look at single families. And I talked to a lender, Huntington, and they looked at my wife and I, two nice W-2s, and they were like, yeah, whatever you guys want. And found a property. It was a foreclosure. And back then, the banks were doing carpet, paint. They were making them all nice because they needed to move them in 2011, 2012. And so I got a property under contract in Akron, Ohio, and it was 40,000, and it was a turnkey, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, colonial, 2 story, probably about 1,500 square feet. And yeah, new bath, new kitchen. Maybe I'm not sure on the kitchen, but like, yeah, I mean, the carpet paint was turnkey ready. And as we were going through the process, right, the 30-day, I found another property that came out 2 blocks away. And this was a 2006 build, 4 bed, 2 bath, attached garage, stainless appliances for 50,000.
Wow.
And it was crazy because it was on a tiny, tiny parcel that was split off from another back in 2006. And then this house was built. But I was like, hey, I went back to Huntington. Hey, I know we're just in the process of closing this one. And then my loan officer was like, yeah, you guys are great. You guys can get 2 loans. You got enough from your bonus. So my bonus had come in
Mhm.
about 20,000. And that was enough for my 10% down payment on 30-year fixed notes. And, it's crazy when I look at what the closing costs were when you're not an investor and you have no idea the title companies. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like robbery, all the title company fees. But
Yeah.
so I closed on those two single families in 2012. And that was as we were having a child, as we were relocating for a different company I was taking a job for.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, okay, hey, we're going to cash flow $500 to $600 a month on these two properties. We're going to, that's going to be our weekends. Our weekends are covered now. And then in 18 years, we can sell those properties and that's going to fund college. Like we don't have to worry about saving for college now for our daughter that was just getting born.
Right.
And that's all I thought it could be. Like there wasn't bigger pockets. There
Gotcha.
wasn't an understanding of retiring
So,
and building a rental portfolio.
so there's so many questions there, I guess. And you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You've got a nice job. You have this bonus. I know some people say, "Well, I didn't have a bonus." I'm going to get started. We'll talk about that later. But you got a bonus, and you decide to not increase your lifestyle, right? And to go out and buy this $45,000 first property, right? And then you had some extra money left over and you were like, let's go buy the other one. How did you even find did you find a realtor? I mean, how did you figure out that 45,000 one was the right one? And oh, this $50,000 brand new construction 2006 is also a good one. What were the things that you were using? What was the education? How did you kind of come around to that?
So that network at work that I mentioned of my close friend who was working with those two other gentlemen, and they were playing fast and loose, right? Credit card checks but this was the agent that I got recommended from them.
Okay.
So, back then there was so much, I don't want to say capacity, but the demand was so much below what was out there. And so they weren't afraid to like, hey, here's our agent, because there was more properties than they could buy. There was so few investors and buyers then. And so, yes, I worked with this agent, and yeah, she could tell me, right, hey, oh, these are the ones that he's been buying. These are the ones that he's been buying. Like, oh yeah, it's a great property. Like, look at this and look at the numbers. And oh yeah, my 30-year fixed loan's only going to be $350 a month. Property taxes, insurance, another $150. Okay, so now I'm up to like 500, and I can rent this for 850, 900.
That's cash flow, right?
Hey, hey, yeah.
Did you ever play the
So
cash flow game that came with Robert Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I have never, and I was just talking to somebody last week about it, about because my kids and I were playing Monopoly,
Yeah.
and he said, "Oh, have you ever played cash flow?" I was like, "No, I've looked at that. I don't know why I haven't pulled the trigger, but I want to get at least cash flow for kids, and start that with them, and then get the regular cash flow." But yeah, I keep hearing about it, and I haven't gotten it.
No, no, no worries. So, in terms of the construction company or the people that you had doing the renovations, did that also come from that network of people that you were dealing with?
So those first two were turnkey.
Okay.
And yeah, I did have a couple little things, and I used a contractor that had worked on my basement when I had my basement
Got
finished. So a referral from somebody at work that had finished my basement. I got him to do my first couple, but then he got, that was really it for him. He just got too busy and it was too far away. And that's when I had to, yeah, leverage that network. And it was actually the real estate agent's husband who did some work for the other guys that started doing some work, and contractors might be getting a little bit ahead, but yeah, it took me about 3 years to finally find the one.
Yeah.
And it was a learning curve. And then I was stolen. I had bad contractors. I mean, I went
That
through a lot of challenges.
falls on the losses. That's one big thing that I know that you're known for. I want to talk a little bit about those, but I guess some of the key points for those who maybe are taking notes or listening is that you have to have some sort of a network that you're working with, right?
Yep.
You have to tap into that. Well, I don't have anybody at my job, someone says. Well, you can always go online, go into Google and type in REIA and then put it
Yep.
city.
Yep.
REIA stands for Real Estate Investment Association. There's tons that are out there. A lot of
Yep.
them are virtual. So even if you don't have one within your city, you can actually go to Real Estate Investment Association meetings around the country because a lot of them are Zoom or on virtual. I would recommend one for the multifamily Zoom at 8 with Julianne Peterson from Capital. Oh wow, it's missing me here, but yeah, Julianne Peterson.
Yeah.
So beyond that, you had that you recognized you weren't going to increase your income, and even to the extent of finding the person who's going to renovate. If you again don't have that network, you can just as you're driving around on any day, if you see a group that's actually working on a house that's renovating a house,
Yep.
pull over, get their card, have a conversation,
Yep.
start
Yep.
building relationships that way. So you
Yep.
got the first one, you got the second one, you're thinking that's it, that's all. But before we move on, you mentioned that there were some losses that you had with these first two. It was some
No,
did
not with the
everything
first
go
two,
well?
but
Oh, the
yeah,
first two went well.
first two were great. They just had some light cosmetic cleanups, and boom, they're rented at 850 and 950. And I kind of think I'm done. And I'm starting a new job, and we had that first child. And then soon after found out we were pregnant again. So 6 months later, oh, guess what?
Congratulations.
And so I was like, well, okay, I guess one house for one house for the other one. Okay, we're still okay. We still can probably pay for, at least 2 years of college for each, and when we sell these. And so somewhere along that time in 2013, I think I started finding content online. Bigger Pockets, I believe, was the first one that I found where I would just lose my nights and weekends just in the forum. And maybe it was 14, but it was sometime around then. And that's how I got a lot of my early, I would say I was learning by doing, by hearing and seeing what the guys at the company were doing, but still just reading so much from people who were bigger and maybe growing a portfolio at just all the forums and Bigger Pockets to start to understand that, oh, okay, maybe this can be a little bigger. And then the lender was kind of that next key of, oh, you guys will actually lend on the rehabs. So this house I'm looking at that I can buy for 40 and I need to put 10 into it. Oh, you guys are going to appraise it based on all those things being done. So at closing, you're going to give me a check. I come with no money. You give me a check at closing. And so, that was kind of stage two, was taking loans up front from community banks that, would take my breakdown of contractor improvements, and they would take it to the appraiser. The appraiser would say, okay, yep, if this house was livable and this, and this, okay, yeah, this is a 75, $80,000 house. And okay, well, I can buy it for 42 and I got to put 8 into it. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You're giving me 15 and I only got to pay the contractor 10. So I get to put 5 in my pocket and have a property that is going to cash flow me $400 a month.
So then you were thinking this is a good thing? Was this a good thing
Yeah.
for you? I mean, what,
Yeah.
because lending at that time was really exciting, right? You were
It was
past the
4.5%, 4% interest rates. And yeah, and those properties, that I was buying then for, yeah, I mean, buying all these around the 40s, 30s and 40s that were appraising then, 75 to 80. Those are all 130 today.
wow.
Um,
So you still
and
have
so,
them. You didn't cash them out.
so a couple have sold. A couple I sold. So I built up, so we went from that kind of phase
Hmm.
to, okay, I have enough cash because I started to flip. So tools in your toolbox, right? If you're a Six Sigma guy, right? If you're a data guy, you've got all sorts of different tools. You got the 5 Why, the fishbone diagram, 7D, root cause analysis. So what I kind of realized was, oh, well, I can do more deals if I have more exit strategies,
Yeah.
right? So, if you are just a rental guy, then you have a very narrow window of, okay, this house has to have a X cap rate or, cash on cash versus, oh, well, this does not make sense to hold, but there's 35, $45,000 of profit to flip this. So I started flipping, and this is once I found that great contractor that I ended up doing probably 70 houses with
Got it.
over
So
six
and
years
you found that contractor through, or
through
did they
relationships,
through relation?
through a realtor. So I kept, the realtors I had the first couple years were good, but not great. And I met a new one who turned out being phenomenal. And so I probably did 25, 30 houses with her. And I had another one because I always think you should have two,
Mhm.
because they have obviously a lot more than one client they're working for. So, to have two, make sure that if agent A saw this property and sent it to another one of their investors, maybe your other agent found this is going to send it to you. So, and they serve different counties kind of too.
Right.
So I served Stark County with this one, Summit County with this one. So I had two counties, had one phenomenal contractor handling all the properties at a time. And we pivoted again. So as I went from buying upfront with 30-year fixed loans to buying with community banks covering the rehab, and we eventually moved to buying in cash, rehabbing in cash, and then burring out of it.
Got it. And burring is just for everybody else who doesn't quite
Yep.
understand.
Yeah. So that's buying it, rehabbing it, renting it, refi, repeat.
There you go.
And I moved to what I kind of call the next stage of burring, which was packages.
Okay.
So it was too much to go to the banker every month. I don't want the bank, he would come over my house, the vice president of lending. Like, I have enough cash. We don't need to do this every month. We're going to do this every 4 or 5 months. We're going to do 5 houses at a time, right? Big packages. And I got a little better fees with that too, as well.
So you qualified pretty much for like a credit line, if you will, so that you could kind of use,
No,
or
it
you
was
found
my
other lines.
cash.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
it was my cash because I built up enough cash because we were living, and this is the biggest reason of our success. We just lived on my W-2. We
Mm.
didn't touch the rental income, the flipping income, snowball.
So you were doing all of this while you still were employed full time. So
Yep.
this does not take a lot of time out of your life. You have a wife, you have two young children,
Yep.
and a full-time job.
Yep. Yep. At one point, 17 engineers at 7 different plants around the country, and I'm traveling. And, we talked earlier, in continuous improvement, there's a
Yep,
process called value stream mapping, where you map the process, right? And these were typically manufacturing, but I also worked in healthcare. So we would
yep,
look at the process of billing, of coding, of triage. And you map the process and you look at what that end output is and what were all the steps of true value add and how much time does that value add take versus what's the total process time, right? So like a car could take, right, 40 days to be
mhm,
made through an assembly plant, but there might truly only be like 3 days, probably even less than that, of true labor time on that car, robot time, welding time, manufacturing time. So the rest is all like queue time and wait time and delays. So, some of the things I identified in buying houses was I really am non-value added in going to look at the property.
mm,
My contractor knows the prices. He
right?
knows the work that's going to be done.
Yep.
I got out of his way once I knew I had the right guy. I can't go in by myself. The agent has to go there anyhow. Why can't they send me pictures? Why can't they send me a video? Or once we've done 10 deals, you just need to tell me, yeah, Zach, this is going to need 2,500 bucks. This is your house. This is your program. And so eventually I'm doing this while I'm traveling around for my W-2 job. And I've got 2 different agents looking at houses. They're telling me this. All right, yep, offer 30, offer 35, 40. And we're buying houses. The keys are going from the realtor to the contractor. He's rehabbing them up, especially on a flip.
Yep.
I'm not the one who's saying this is a good flip or here's what I'm going to sell it for. The realtor is.
Right.
So the realtor is going to be responsible to pick the colors, pick the cabinets, pick the counters, because
Oh,
I don't
yep,
want
that
to hear
makes
them
sense.
tell me, Zach, why'd you choose that? I can't, that's why we missed the price because, oh, look at the flooring. That doesn't, nope. You think it's worth 250,000? You're going to pick those
But
things.
then let's go back to it because that's very interesting where you allowed your realtors to be able to choose that. How oftentimes, sometimes, realtors and others go and choose the high end glossy.
Budget.
You give them a budget. You give them a budget, or you do, how does that work?
The contractor, he gave me the quote, he gave me the budget on his rehab. Hey, we can do this for 30,000. All right. So what kind of budget does she have for lighting? Paint colors is paint and counters are all pretty much the same, but yeah, lighting, yeah, I mean, we're all the cabinets we get are kind of like these hardwood made down in Amish, like, soft close. So there, that price was pretty fixed. And so there really wasn't a lot of things they could go crazy in.
Mhm.
It was more just like, hey, pick the colors of the flooring, pick the colors of the walls, a countertop color. And then, okay, we doing, nickel, or we doing bronze, we doing, what are we doing for fixtures and just staying out of it.
So how are you managing, all of these things while you're away? Or what kind of systems do you have in place? I mean, this budget, is that even in this system? And the agent is saying this is gonna be a gray wall with beige floor. I'm just saying, whatever the case is, how are those communications happening?
I mean, so sometimes I very rarely did I have to get in the middle of it. And the agents knew the contractor. They knew he was going to be working there, and yeah, they needed to stop in occasionally and give him what he needed to know, give him the choices he needed to know.
Okay. So then this was all email. So you weren't using a CRM or anything that,
No, no,
okay.
because we weren't doing this wasn't huge volume. We were flipping for a year.
Okay.
Yep. We were flipping
Or
for a year, and those were 30 to $40,000 profits. So that was an extra 120, 150,000 a year that helped to fund the burr. Right.
gotcha.
That's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about chickens, not an egg. And so it was just like, hey, that's just another thing to do with a cash flow stream. And we're just funding, I'm taking the profits out and I'm able to package burrs now. I'm able to buy 250,000 worth of 5 single families and take that to my lender, and they're going to appraise them. And guess what? They're going to give me 300,000. So I just profited 50, and I cash flow $500 per house times that 5 houses. So that's 2,500 a month, and I'll do 2 packages like that a year. So I was growing my net income like $5,000 a year by burring out 10 houses a year for like 4 or 5 years.
Wow. So how many houses had you hit at your zenith? In
So at 2019, when I finished the W-2 world, and we'll talk about that. So I was up to like 57 single families, I believe, somewhere high 50s.
Oh, wow. And so the property management for those was being done by.
So that was all through just a property portal called Cozy, that's now apartments.com, purchased them. Yeah, so I put everybody in there. All your payments are coming in ACH automatic. I'm following up if there's a payment issue. But yeah, I kept.
So what about the stopped up toilets and things of that sort? Because a lot of people get, really hung up on that. You're doing
Yeah,
57 houses, again, full-time job, two
yep,
young kids, a wife,
yep.
a partridge in a pear tree, etc. I mean, how are you keeping all these things in line other than they're going to just pay and that's it? I mean, how did you know who to choose so that you don't have, those situations? And then how do you deal with the stopped up toilets?
So the other thing I did right from the start was rent with purchase option.
Ah,
So they all had a rent to own type agreement.
got it.
And I know some listeners and people, oh, this is a predatory rent to own guy. He's taking deposits, he's kicking them out. I have never kicked someone out because of an end of a contract. I've had folks, I think my longest tenure now is they've been in there 9 years.
Wow.
Um, you are in here forever. I don't care if you buy it next month. I don't care if you buy it in 20 years. I care about your way of thinking when you're in that property. You're thinking as an occupant owner. You know, if you clog your toilets, if you don't change your furnace filter and your furnace motor blows, if you don't clean out your gutters and they overflow and you have water in your basement, you know that's on you. That I'm not coming out there to do those things because you are responsible for the upkeep on your home.
Wow.
So I got into that right in the beginning, and it definitely allows and sets you up for more passivity with a con, right? So that's the pro. The con is you can lose your chickens, right? They can buy them. And when there is a bad situation, these people think they're going to own it.
Right.
And they're whether they've invested anything into it or they've left it just as they moved in on day one, when their situation changes, it's not going to be like a clean rental move out.
Yeah.
So my end of relationships, I mean, I've had some great ones, right? They had a job relocation. They handed me back a property that looks even nicer. They've painted it nicer. They've put
Right.
up shelving. But I do get these situations where, yeah, where it's not like, oh, okay, yeah, we're having issues and we're just going to go move in with friends because this rental, it's, they stop taking care of the property. They fall behind, and I am, it's another area where I'm not good at. I am not good at, hey, it's day 3. Here's your 3-day notice, and I'm filing eviction in 3 more days. No, okay. Oh, you can only pay 500 this month. Okay. Well, what's your plan to catch up next month? Oh, okay. You can pay another. I end up given way too much leniency to where, oh, we're a couple thousand behind when I finally press them, and then maybe they'll leave me a trashed house, or maybe, they're going to hold on and hope that the courts throw it out for some reason. And, 4 months go by and then I get, I'm 4,000 behind and I get a bad property. So there can be some challenges with rent
So
to own.
yeah, so there's a couple things there that you mentioned, with not, giving so much leniency. That means that you have to have a lot of reserves. And given that you had a lot of cash, if you will, from, the cash flow that you had, you were able to, be able to sustain that hit because you had a lot of cash flow potentially from these other properties. I would assume. But then when they left out, then that was another ding. But it sounds like most of your portfolio of the 57 houses were performing rather than them not performing. So it was a relatively small hit. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look. We have a lot of income coming in, and we live a great life,
Hmm.
but because of my um I mean, frugality, because of how I was raised, right? We still live on 45, 50% of what comes in.
Gotcha.
Maybe it's a little higher. I've had a lot of syndications go south. So maybe we're living on 55, 60% of what's coming in, because a lot of those stop their preferred payments and interest payments
Oh
that are
gosh,
coming
we're
in.
gonna have to pivot there. We're gonna have to pivot
Yeah, yeah.
because I do want to ask
Um,
about that. But I'm just interested because for some
yep,
people who are interested in doing the bird thing and wanting to
yep,
whatever and really kind of have like a no frills kind of way of being able, well, not no frills, but no real stress, because that's what I'm not getting from
yep,
that.
yep,
Hey, I got to worry about the clogged toilet, and I've got to have a property manager that does that's going to service these things. By making someone, or renting these out as rent to own, part of that agreement is you own the property. So if there's ever
mhm,
anything wrong, it's your responsibility versus just being in a true rental situation. And so
yep,
with that, I think that now it makes sense, if you will,
yep,
how things were able to, people are able
yep.
to save it. So if you do a 2-year option and they don't exercise it within the second year, do you renew your contract with them, or is it
Yep.
okay?
So I'll continually renew. I'll
Okay,
continually move over their deposit and their credits.
got it.
I keep moving everything. The only thing, so your rents are going to change,
Okay,
and your purchase price is going to change.
got it. All right, cool. The rent's going to change the purchase because again, the market has gone up, and
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Now I have had some people that, I had a couple people coming out of COVID that made more on the house than I did.
Oh
And
wow.
hey, because I was writing, and I still do write a 4-year. I write them a 4-year because, again, I'm not trying to do this predatory at all. I want them to feel like, hey, they're not being taken advantage of, and because they're not. Like, I'm giving you 4 years, and I'm going to move over deposits and your credits. But yeah, in 4 years, your rent will change and your purchase price will change.
Got it.
But I had people like in 21 that had a contract from like 17, right, of a property that I was all into for 40, that they had a buy price at 75, and that property is now worth 125. And they just got to buy it for 75 minus their credits. So they got to buy that house for 70. So they could have turned around and put it on the market, and they could have made 40 where I only made, 25 plus the rents. But
Yeah, but by
hey,
then it was their home. It was their home, and they wanted to live in it, and
yeah,
they just kept the
yeah.
equity. And then later
So
on, sometime they can whatever. So you provided a good solid home for
yeah, you got that's if you're going to, like, that's the con is
them.
is okay. Yep, people could make more money if the market, if the government prints $9 trillion and prices fly up during your contract, that can happen. And I have really close friends that wanted to follow my model, and
Sure,
they started to build up.
sure.
But guess what? Two of their folks purchased their homes, and now they're like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore because I don't want to lose my chickens, because these guys still have jobs that they're trying to get out of. So it's it's a double edged, like, you want passivity, but you could lose your chicken. So,
Yeah,
that's why, it would have been unfortunate had I had tons of tenants buying mine, and I wouldn't have been able to reach FI. But now at this point, I've gotten into so many other ancillary streams, and I'm continuing to buy single families again after I stopped for 3 years.
oh wow.
Um, so I
So
stopped, yeah, in 2019, and
okay,
we didn't talk about one of my burning platforms was losing my job when we only had two rentals. So right after those first two,
after the first two, you lost your job.
yes,
Okay,
I
wow.
lost my six-figure job. It disappeared, and it was rough. It was bad. Yeah, what were we going to do? We just built a new house. These
Oh
rentals are providing nothing.
yeah,
And now we've just lost 65% of our income down to my wife's job. And so, when I talk about the things that motivated me, like that was a bad situation that I was like, wow. And as Tim Shiner always puts it, with the W-2, you have one leg under your table, right? How stable of a table is that,
Yeah, it's
right?
not very.
Versus now, my table has so many legs under it in different streams and, rentals and syndications and promissory notes, hard money, all these different things. But yeah, when that happened, like it was bad. So you fast forward 6 years later, it happened to me again in 2019 when I had three, four times the net income coming in than my W-2. And I just kind of chuckled and said, yep, all right, that's it. My division was eliminated and that was it.
Well, let's go back to, so you lost your job, and you now have this, 65% of your income is gone. What are you doing to, I guess, expand the business? Or did you just wind up getting another job, in
Oh,
the
it
next
was,
3 months
yep,
after?
right, right to LinkedIn, right to my network. And yeah, within 3 weeks, started a job, same pay, maybe actually a tiny bit more. So landed very softly and
Yeah,
everything was fine. But that was an eye-opening experience
got it.
that at the time wasn't probably as motivating as once I started to understand these things from Tim Shiner and all these other people. Like, oh, there's a different way,
Hmm.
to build all your chickens and not have this, be reliant on an employer, which, twice in my life now is gone in an hour.
Yeah,
Right? Twice, six figures has been gone in an hour. And that can never happen when you own tons and tons of diversified real estate and lending.
gotcha.
So it was a very different story the next time it happened.
Well, let's talk about your pivot then, from just buying homes, right? Because you said you took a hiatus, for the last three
Yeah.
years and buying homes, to getting into syndications. And
Yeah.
describe what kind of syndications were you doing and why you decided to go that direction, rather
Yeah.
than continuing the ultimate burst strategy that you were doing with buying and holding.
So in 2019, now these homes, the market is so much more competitive. So instead of there being 100 people in my area buying rentals, there's now probably over 1,000 when you count the out-of-state buyers. So there's so much more demand. The prices are just, I hadn't, so the rents weren't fully the rents weren't nearly as high as they are now, but the house prices were approaching. Okay, well now we're in the 50s and 60s, and do I want to pay that much when I'm all into these houses in the 30s and 40s?
Hmm.
And okay, yeah, the rents are 1,000, but that's not worth it. I have so many. And I start to hear and see and read about these syndications. And, oh man, they sound sexy, right?
Gotcha.
Oh, an apartment building in Tampa, self-storage in Dallas, a resort, a golf course winery resort in Delaware, New
Right.
Jersey, and all these things. And I look at their IRRs, and these are mid-high 20 IRRs, even some low 30.
Hmm.
Man, I mean, that's competing with my single families. Like, why wouldn't I, now that I have a lot of cash coming in and my cash reserves are building up, now that I'm
Right.
not flipping, I stopped flipping. So we're pushing a lot of cash in my accounts. And, syndications, how I teach and tell today, you're putting your money to sleep, right? It can't be bird out, right? You can't put it in and out and control that syndication. You have to leave it in the syndication. So, but I had enough capital to start to put it to sleep. And so I vetted out, some operators but this again, like I don't have a ton of experience in studying financials and reading PPMs. It was
Okay.
really just network and referrals. Like, oh, this company was on Bigger Pockets and he made sense on Bigger Pockets. And oh, I listened to him on Cash Flow Ninja, MC Lauscher, and MC Lauscher's invested with them. And so, yeah, so I started trickling in, 50 to 100,000 in a couple different syndications in 2019.
Okay, so you were going in as an LP, as a limited partner
Yep.
into syndications. And
Yep.
so you were vetting syndicators. What was your rubric, if you will, for vetting someone who was a syndicator? I mean, other than, hey, they were on this podcast, you know what I mean? And yeah,
So it was basically, you know, I found them, it wasn't, oh, I got an email from this guy and let me just go send him some money. It was, I found them through doing my research and reading and forums and podcasts I was listening to. And then really, the, either I liked the industry or I liked the diversification of that industry and the region. So obviously, I wasn't interested in doing a syndication in Cleveland, Ohio, right? I'm here in Ohio. I own 57 single families in Ohio. I want to diversify out west to the east, to the south. I want to diversify by region and I want to diversify by
Why?
asset.
Why? Because all of your single families are there in that area. I mean, why not own commercial in that area? Why decide to go and diversify?
Because who's moving to Ohio? I wouldn't live here if I wasn't born here. And, like the apartments, like why do people want to live here? Why do people want to have self-storage here or commercial? It's just an area, that I didn't see as sexy. COVID was pushing people, right? South and west.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it just seemed some of it was prudent and some of it just seemed cooler to, oh, I'm in the Carolinas, I'm out in Texas, I'm in Florida. And yeah, there weren't a lot of big syndication opportunities in Ohio. You didn't see many big companies offering things in
Got it.
Cleveland, Columbus. So, that's kind of how it did. And I believe, right? I'd never been lied to at that point. I'd never been part of a fraud.
Right. So you mentioned that you diversified in industries. Now, this is, this podcast is towards, apartment buildings and things of that sort, but it sounded like you were in self-storage. What other types of commercial real estate were you involved in syndications?
So the first ones I was in the hospitality space, so hotels and golf courses.
Gotcha.
And then I went into apartments, mostly in Florida. And then it's North Carolina, South Carolina,
Hmm.
and then self-storage, um, oil and gas,
Wow.
business flips, triple net commercial.
So you were
Uh,
looking at pretty much just the numbers and then the industry, or was it the industry and then the numbers, or
I
it's
mean, I'm an honest guy. Like the numbers was, IRRs was the first things, right? IRRs and plan duration, right?
gotcha.
Things that were in this 2 to 3, 3 to 4 year duration. I
Got
wasn't going after something that said 5 to 7.
gotcha.
And the numbers in the high 20s or a 30% IRR because I'm
Yeah.
believing these people, right? I'm believing them.
Yeah. So
And so I
yeah.
just started funneling I mean, a lot. I sold off single families. So prices are going up in single families. So I sold off like 17 and cleared another like 2 million that I just funneled into syndications through 2020 to 2022, 23.
Yeah. So in for everybody else who's listening, the IRR stands for the internal rate of return, and that tells you pretty much, a lot of people talk about cash on cash, internal rate of return, average ARV or average da, 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 da. Can't get my words together here. But there are different numbers that people look for. And so
Yep.
as you're hearing right now for Zach, IRR is a real critical one for him. And again, plan duration. When you get into these syndications, there's a plan. Hey, we plan to do this with this apartment building or this commercial, storage, self-storage unit. We're going to renovate it, and it's going to take us about 2 or 3 years before we, cash everybody out, either through a refinance or we're going to sell the property, whatever that case is.
Yep.
And so, during the heyday, 2 to 3 years was a wonderful thing. Everybody that's what everybody was doing. Everybody was doing it with bridge debt, right? That was sometimes the only way that you could actually do that. What is bridge debt? It's akin to getting kind of an ARV, not an ARV, oh wow, my terms here are getting there. A short-term loan that then resets itself in 3 to 5 years,
Yep. Yep.
right?
An arm.
An ARM. There you go. I said ARV, but I knew it started with an A.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
an ARM is adjustable
Adjustable
rate
rate
mortgage,
mortgage. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
adjustable rate mortgage. And
Yeah.
so we know that, having long-term debt, really, is the best way to go if you're working with a house that you're owning, or if you're going to do single families. But in multifamily world, every 3, 5, 7, 10 years, depending on the type of loan you have, you're going to have to refinance. So you're going to get a balloon.
Hmm.
It's not the same way as it is in residential. And so what has happened, it sounds like, and about to ask you this question, you got into trouble with some of the syndications, and you hadn't been lied to up until this point. So there seems to be some trouble in the water. What happened, if you will, and when did you start noticing that was happening? Because you're funneling a lot of cash, even to the extent of putting in an additional $2 million from the sale of 17 of your single family homes. What did you start seeing happen?
So, so the first thing I did, and I tell everything. Like I did a very dumb local promissory note that was fraud. So that was the first time I was ever, and
So
we'll never know between a direct lie or this guy and his partners were just loony. Um, but yeah, that was a local loan that went bad.
So let's talk about what that promissory note is and what it looks like for just everybody else that's
Mhm.
out there. It seems like there was someone who came to you and said, "Hey, we recognize you probably may have some money. We have this thing that we're trying to do. Can you loan us the money?"
Yep.
And you say, "Yep, I will loan you this
Yeah.
money against whatever collateral." How did they collateralize this particular loan?
Oh boy. So
Oh,
so
okay.
they didn't come right to me. They were referred. So someone else that I know closely knew this individual and was like, "Hey, this guy, he's kind of he talks way up here. Like he's pretty smart. Like I don't understand what he's doing, but like, I thought you do these types of you lend to people." And so I had a conversation with them and it seemed pretty crazy and they were offering crazy returns. And he was like, "Well, come meet us tomorrow. We operate out of an office of a longtime attorney. So a 40 some year attorney. He's in his 60s. And I had talked to somebody else. Oh yeah, we know this attorney. Yep, his office. Yeah, I mean, he's been around a long time. Everybody knows this guy. I mean, I'm not gonna say his last name, but his first name's John. So yeah, so I go down to John's office,
I'm not an attorney.
and yeah, I go down there, and yeah, they're like John's involved, and all these guys, like, I can see this business functioning of what they're doing, and oh, it's gonna, as soon as we launch this thing on the exchange and do this and do this, we just need capital for the final licensing and this and that, and you're gonna have your money back probably in like 2 to 3 months, but we're going to write this note for 6 months and boom, boom. And I was going to make 50% of my money, right? In 6 months.
There you go.
So I'm like, okay, well, and we're going to secure it and we're going to hold collateral here. And the attorney who, so the other two guys, I mean, I don't know them and they're talking huge stuff, but at least this 40-year attorney and they operate at his office. He's the one signing documents. He's the one preparing the note. He's the one saying, I'm holding collateral. All right. I mean, this seems like a lock. Well, it wasn't a lock at all. And we got fraud judgments. So we got punitive damages. So I have like 3 times my loan amount and punitive damages and judgments. But these guys don't have anything. And so now we are proceeding against the attorney.
Oh, wow.
Since he wrote the note, he failed to hold collateral, he failed a fiduciary duty. At best case, at worst case, he's involved in this fraud. So, so we have this like at the state court and the bar association. But so, yeah, my point. So I guess the learning lesson there is I never lend now unless it is the closest of friends. And fortunately, I have 2 close friends that use like $3 million in working capital because they flip 100 homes a year. So they consume enough of my capital that I want, like in kind of short term, medium term lending. I can call it, they can send it back. Or else, I mean, really, I'm not lending anywhere else besides my closest friends.
Sure.
Or, if you can be first lien position and you are sure, your money is well under ARV and you're on title, then you're on collateral. Like it can't just disappear or somebody's not holding collateral. But that was the first one where, man, I guess people don't do what they say.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, I got you. So,
It's
so what else would you have done other than just, lending to your personal friends? Would you maybe have gotten your own, attorney involved in this? Or, I mean,
I mean, you mean to start a hard money lending business,
to
or what do
either
you
start a
mean?
hard money lending business or to do an extra set of due diligence eyes? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I'm sure they wouldn't even have done, dude. They would have said no. Like, why would you do something like this? Or,
Gotcha.
he says he's holding collateral, but have you validated it? Is it an escrow account? And I mean, he is in trouble. But he's now. I mean, he's approaching 70 years old now. So, what does he really care if he
Right.
does lose his license now? But was he involved in it, or was he just very neglectful in his duties as legal? But yeah, it's like that movie. Did you ever see that movie where the guy figures out how to lie and no one's ever lied in the world before? It's the
Oh,
Ricky Gervais.
I
Ricky
think it was.
Gervais from yeah, The Office.
I think it
And
was like a comedy, right? If I'm not mistaken.
yes, yes. When he figures out about lying, and so everybody believes everything he says. Oh, the world's got to end. We got to go have sex right now. He tells that woman, and she's like, "Do we have time to find a hotel room?" Like, so it's like that was the first instance of me being like, oh my goodness. So when people tell me they're going to do something, sometimes they're not going to do it. They're lying. They're just trying to
Yeah.
steal. And so from there,
You said you had some. Yeah.
the next one was another local promissory note with a business that they went under, but they also basically misappropriated funds out of the business. And so that's another fraud lawsuit going on. And then, so now we're talking like early 23. And so now capital calls start coming in. So in early 23, I got hit in 1 week for like $100,000 in capital calls from one of the syndicators that I'm with. And so, for folks that aren't
How to
familiar,
say,
right? When you're in a syndication,
yeah.
right, they have a plan, they raise money, but when something happens and they don't meet their obligations, you as an equity holder, right, as a limited partner who owns 1% or 2%, whatever your percentage is, you are responsible to kick in when they have a shortage, or else you're going to get diluted. And that dilution, I think, it's probably always going to be a material dilution. So it's going to be greater in percentage than what they're actually calling, because they're going to have to go get hard money. And I don't know how good they're even audited. Like if they kick in their own money, but tell you that they had to get hard money. But in this case, they did a capital call of like 18%. And if you didn't fund that 18% capital call, you were going to be diluted around 35%.
Oh, wow. So yeah, again, for everybody else, if something's happening with the property and there's not enough money coming in that's being generated,
Yeah.
then they got to get the money from somewhere. And so if you are,
So in this case, these were Florida and Texas property,
oh
excuse me,
my Lord.
Florida and Texas properties. And they got smacked with habitational insurance premium increases because of hurricanes and the ice storm. And the big ones, though, were, as you talked about earlier, the short-term financing. So these were syndications that bought these properties in 21 and 22, and they bought them with short-term debt to, right, turn these around and sell them again at a 5 cap. And you can't sell things at a 5 cap now when your interest rates are 6.5 and 7. So they had to go buy, 2-year extensions. And so that was a challenging. And then shortly after that, my self-storage builds all stopped paying their monthly preferred. And I mean, they're not radio silent, but they are very silent as the work has stopped.
Just to explain what that is for everybody else, sometimes these syndications say if you give us 50, $100,000, we will every month, no matter what, give you 8% of your money, whatever you've given us. And that's a preferred return before we return any other capital to anybody else, because you're at this tier of giving, kind of like if you give it this level, then you'll consistently get that. When that happens, what do you want syndicators to do? What do you want the operators to come to do when you have situations like these? Because again, I would assume in the PPM, which is the private placement memorandum, it states these kinds of things can happen. So how should a syndicator, I guess, communicate with you being an LP in these deals, limited partner in these deals?
I mean, what I want to see, so what we saw in the instance of the Florida and Texas properties with Lorin, the webinar was just so high level versus show us the balance sheets, show us what's coming in, what's going out, where are we at by giving you this money, what, show us numbers instead of like, he actually just put up a title slide and talked for like 30 minutes in front of a title slide instead of like showing deep financials by property. And so that didn't go over well. And a similar one actually just happened 2 days, it was Friday, on another syndication I'm in, which I don't know if you've heard about the ATM machine funds through Prestige.
No.
Yeah, so those have been going on like 10 years, these funds in ATM machines, and they're structured really nice, and they're considered personal property, so it's 100% bonus depreciation. So you get 100% deduction year one.
Wow.
But they've missed their payments, and it was a very, very bad call. This guy just could not communicate effectively last week. Dave Zook, if you've heard of Dave Zook,
I've not.
the real asset investor, he's a
I think I
big,
actually have. Yeah.
yeah, he's really, really well known in the syndication investing space. So he had a follow-up webinar because of how disappointed he was with that, to try and clarify what he thinks is going on, because he has a lot of investors into that fund. To say what I want, I don't know. I'm not a good person to understand the intricacies of these. Everything I touched in hard real estate was gold, and I do what I say I'm going to do. And
Right.
so, yes, I've been duped and chased butterflies and
So
shiny things.
do you okay, and you may not be able to give names in some of these other questions. Do you believe you were duped by the situations with the multifamilies that, they bought in 21 and 22, and because the interest rates have gone up and they're unable to, really sell at what they thought the cap rate would be, do you think you were duped by that, or is that just a normal course of kind of how things happen?
So I think, to me, an explanation of, okay, and then I'm sure they did with their models. Here's what we're buying it at. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we'll divest at. I just, I've never been through these interest rate cycles, and
Got it.
because in hindsight, I don't know, like, should they have called out to me, hey, just so you're aware, look, we are modeling that interest rates are going to stay at whatever, the Fed fund rate, interest rates are not going to go up. And you need to be aware that if they do, this whole plan goes to hell. So, if they would have called that out better, would I have done something different? The self-storage thing, I just feel like that plan was sold so locked tight. And now to hear that sites that I went into in 2021 are still a dirt field, that they have not done anything with them. I just found that out today, actually. I'm like, oh my God. Why, how, like, yes, I know you're having problems now, but what happened to 21, 22? Like, how did you not start? Oh, well, permits and zoning and this and that.
So with all of this, there is generally on the GP side, if you have a syndication, you generally have two groups of people. One is the LP; those people are the silent investors, like Zach is. I assume in most of these, the GP are those people who are actually managing and doing the work day to day and overseeing that the work gets done for the entire investment. A role in the GP is client relations, where you actually talk to clients and you send them out things on a monthly basis. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, last week when we were doing another podcast interview, and he mentioned that one of his properties in Texas caught fire, and I think there was about 20% of the property that actually was destroyed by fire. And he said that he was a part of the GP, and he did not call everybody on the LP side because he only brought maybe 20 people, but he called every person directly before an email even went out to let them know what happened, so that people got the understanding, hey, this is a problem. Here's what's happening. We don't really have a solution yet, but we're planning to have a webinar on such and such a day. Just want to let you know what's going on. And from what I understood, he stated that a lot of the people who had invested said, well, how are the people who were there? Was there any life loss? Was anybody injured? They were more concerned about the human piece. Obviously, that's a good thing because those are the right people that you want to have investing with you. But he actually called them. That was his way of being able to rush toward a problem rather than to, avoid a problem. It sounds like some of these people that you may have invested with kind of avoided having consistent communication with you, that you would have preferred to have more communication. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. More communication, clear communication. Um, yeah, it's a mess when I look at kind of this portfolio, and yeah, just here in the last couple of weeks has been where we've kind of found the self-storage one is a disaster, and then this ATMs is just, it's happening, as we speak. Like, I was supposed to be getting a wire today for the last 3 months of payments, and I'm assuming that didn't happen.
Wow. So what is, rather than me wanting to draw a conclusion here on what should be done, what is it that you would advise others who are interested in investing in syndications do?
All
What?
right. So if I could magically have
Oh
this
yeah.
7 figures of money back that's out there in messes right now, I would be going on to Private Investor Club or 506B Group, the two largest private investor communities. That's like heavily guarded. They don't let anybody, you can't join and post if you're a member of a fund. Like, this is just private investors that are investing, I mean, between the whole group of them, hundreds of millions of dollars across private assets. And they bring on sponsors, they drill them, with people who have been doing this for 20 years.
Can
They
you
drill these sponsors.
can you share the name of that group?
Yeah, Private Investor Club, PIC
Oh,
group,
okay,
and
private investment.
506B Group.
Got it.
So those are two groups, and they both do some type of background check on you to like see, okay, you're not affiliated with a fund or anything. And so, but they do have a marketplace where they allow sponsors that they have vetted, that they've seen audited financials with, that they have had on private webinars, and they've drilled them, and they have their top tiers of sponsors, and then they leverage their power to get better terms. So lower minimums, higher prefs, better distribution waterfalls. And I was finding those groups kind of toward the end of me pushing heavy into syndications and still being naive. Oh, these guys are talking about 12 and 13%, 14% returns. What? That's not even interesting to me. I'm going, oh, look at this Lorin in Tampa, 28% return. Look at this self-storage. Look at these ones. Like, I don't know. These guys are just old. I don't know why they won't do it. And boom, smack, 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 smack. Just like the oil and gas stuff. Like, I invested in this oil and gas company that's a disaster. And yeah, like I go into those groups and I do some research. Oh, yeah, they've talked about these guys, and yep, this is a common thing. They dilute their funds, they do this, merge them. Yep. So yeah, that money's probably gone too.
Oh my gosh, to the
So
seven figure loss. So those are the two groups you would go because they actually vet people. They actually have smaller returns. So just because
yeah.
the return is smaller does not necessarily mean that it's a bad investment. It may mean
Yeah.
that it's actually a
Well,
more
it means they are doing things conservatively that, like I think MLG Capital is like a 20 some year old company that does might be both residential and commercial, or maybe it's just, I don't know. But yeah, you look at their fund and you look at the return, and yeah, it's this stable, like for the last 20 years, like it's averaging that 10 to 12%. And yeah, I mean, that's what is going to be realistic and safe versus these disasters that I've gone into that really need interest rates to change and to free up
exactly.
capital markets.
So then what from hey, so that was something came through my computer. Sorry about that, everybody. But um, so with respect to these other groups, we talked about these groups probably are actually, securely or underwriting correctly. I want to ask you about the market, moving forward. What are you seeing? Are you seeing more pain? Do you see that there's a potential, rate cut? Because there's been talk about this that's going to happen at the end of this year. At the end of this year, it's in your face. At the end of this year, what are your thoughts about what you see
Uh,
coming?
So when it comes to some of that stuff, I just call that like mental masturbation or macro masturbation. Yeah, who knows? And I try not to spend any time debating and talking about that kind of stuff. What I have done is I have pulled back. I've stopped any type of out of my control investing. I have built back up. I've bought 7 single families. Um, I did a nice 22 unit flip of an apartment building and some multis with a contractor partner of mine. We planned to hold those long term, but they became a challenge. And these California investors that are buying up my single families, and I mean, they came in at a crazy price, cash, no appraisal, no inspections, and we're like, yep. And so, that was 550 profit in 18 months on 150 out of pocket.
Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
So I would love to keep doing more stuff like that with the right partners that can help that stuff. And yeah, I don't see myself doing any more types of syndications like that, any lending outside of my backyard. I'm just going to go keep plugging and chugging to try to offset 7 figure losses. And I don't have to pay taxes for a long time now.
That's a good thing because you've got all those
Yeah.
losses.
I said a while ago to somebody on a podcast, I said, you know, I used to, well, you cannot pay taxes for 2 reasons, being an astute investor and being a stupid investor. And, right now I got both things merging where I do things very astutely with how I live my life as a business with all my properties and vehicles and travel. But now I also have plenty of rollover losses on the K1 fraud, L1, LP side and
So,
mess.
so you mentioned, and I know we're going to close here because we've been talking for quite a period of time. But thank you so much for sharing because, these are lessons that other people can learn from that I can learn from as well. What is a good partner to you? You said you'd love to continue investing with
Yeah.
the right partner. What is a good
Yep.
good partner for you?
So my expertise and passion at this point is systems, money, right? I can provide capital, I can provide lending contacts as I'm partnered with many local banks. Insurance, Berkshire Hathaway insurance relationship. So I've got kind of the capital, insurance, financing, systems, right? My oversight of KPIs and data and systems. But so my partner is somebody who fills the other end, more of the boots on the ground, right? The guy who's either doing the rehabs or managing the contractors, who's dealing with the tenants, who's dealing with the buildings, finding the properties. And that's what that last, apartment package deal like really was. It was, two contractors that I had worked with in the past came up with this deal off market. Hey, Zach, what do you think about this? And I saw the numbers and I'm like, yes, you take this down, and how can I be a part of it? And they're like, well, yeah, we need some capital. Done. Like, here it is. And, so I'd love to keep doing that. And that's where, so I tried a couple of years ago with partnerships to fill this void of engagement and interaction with others. I really wanted to create partnerships, fund them, and develop and teach and coach. And some of them didn't work at all. Guys wanted to rocket ship too fast. They wanted to be where I'm at, but they didn't want to take 6 years. They wanted to do it in 2. And so they made mistakes and they screwed up things by capital. And fortunately, those all worked to get everything back. But so that's what had me kind of like, there's only so many people that partnerships are going to work with and make sense with. And so that's kind of this next phase now of like the influencing and the coaching and the, presenting at the conference and doing the podcast. And so I see those as kind of my 2 streams moving forward, is continuing to do what it is that got me all the money that I lost, handing it to others, and build that back. But also, try to build this life to where I can engage with others and create a big network of investors and students around the country that, I'm going to go to San Diego next week and hang out with Tim. He's doing cool stuff there. I got a contact here. And just build this bigger life and engage with more people that I can help and I can partner with and do more cool stuff with.
So you mentioned, is that the community that you're speaking of? Because I remember earlier when just before we were about to record, we were talking about that, you're now looking to build community, where you may have been lacking that a little bit before. So you're going to conferences and things of that sort to do that. Are you planning to build your own, or?
No, so I'm a good friend of mine, Dustin Heiner, has the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. And so he's the one that helped get me out of my shell to present this past year. So I presented there, and that's where I built my brand of the passive income life. And so that's my website, The Passive Life. And that's at realzachzimmer.com. And, the podcast, The Passive Income Life with Zach Zimmer, that's on Spotify and iTunes. And yeah, so just trying to build that to create a bigger network and, help folks with my strategies and my understanding. And yeah, I mean, maybe some cool partnerships can come from it, and find areas of synergy that other people have that, that I'm lacking, or what do I have that they're lacking, and, build a community.
There we go. So then let me ask this question. We have this last final question that we ask everybody on our podcast. It's giving us the boot. Since this is sponsored by Red Boot LLC, the company behind Strategic Multifamily Investing Podcast. And it's that piece of information or that piece of advice that you would give to someone to spur them on to the next piece of action. So give us the boot, Zach.
The boot. So for me, the motivation came from like the burning platform of losing my job, right? Boom. I don't want somebody else to ever put me in tears, and me and my wife in tears again, right? Financially, not understanding how we're going to live. The other motivating factor came also from pain of seeing my father and my father-in-law retire from great careers, and their health immediately fell off a cliff.
Oh, wow.
One worse than another, but like they're not living the golden years that you save that egg for. Right. They ran businesses, they worked for companies, they built huge, 401ks and IRAs and all these things to then live, and so that's what our issue with this rat race. You're spending the healthiest years of your life in the race.
Yeah.
And you don't know how long that health is it going to last? Is it going to last until you get your time back?
Yeah.
And so, those two things just combine to say, no, like I want to live my life now. And, vacation 4 times a year. No, I want a vacation twice a month. Like I want my life to be vacation. And two books that helped. So that's like your intrinsic mindset. But like Cardone, right? Grant Cardone, love him or hate him, right? Brash, arrogant. Like his book 10X and then the follow-up Boba, Be Obsessed or Be Average, hit me in the right point when I
Gotcha.
was getting my systems in place. And those books were about like foot to the floor, right? Pedal down, and you find a system that works. And okay, yes, this burr strategy, buying these houses work. All right, I'm gonna buy every house, like every house I can find, put offers on. And yeah, I mean, there was a year I bought 17 houses, like, and these were all from different sellers, but like it was more than one a month while I have 15 engineers and 7 different plants and two, an infant, a toddler, or two toddler, like, so it was just, keep your foot down when you find it, because that market, that strategy, may not be there forever.
There you go. Well, listen, Zach, thank you again for being so transparent and sharing the pain that you're currently going through, have gone through, and hopefully, will be over very soon with this. And but again, as you mentioned before, at least the benefit is that you may not be able to pay taxes, have to pay taxes for quite a while, with all of the
Yeah.
losses that you have that you're carrying forward. So.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you again. And if there's anything that we can do here at this platform to support you, please feel free to let us know.
Yeah, and I had a little special for your listeners. I'll give out my top strategies to 7-figure passive income. So all they need to do is text TPL for the passive life. Text TPL to 33777.
Got it. TPL and 3377.
777. Yep.
There you go. Everybody go and download that particular report that he has. And again, thank you again, Zach, for all the time that you've spent with us today.
Very great. Thanks. Great to be here.